I would like to ask you just what your thoughts were on Errol Spence Jr.'s loss to Terence Crawford, and do you feel that a rematch between them at 154 would be any different?
I mean, firstly, I think Terence Crawford, I said before, I thought he'd win the fight by stoppage. He's just an incredible talent. You know, I don't like it when people start saying Errol Spence looked old, he struggles at the weight, the car crash affected him, the retina tear affected him.
He didn't look like...
The reality is, and I said in the build-up to that fight, those things will take their toll on you. Errol Spence has been making 147. I remember when he made it against Kell Brook, what was that, 5 years ago when he first won the title? He was tight on the weight then. So you can imagine he's tight on the weight now, and you can't afford to be anywhere near tight at the weight against someone as brilliant as Terence Crawford. I just don't like the way that sometimes Crawford doesn't get the credit because people are looking for excuses. I think at 154, I think it might be a better weight for Errol Spence, but it won't be a different result. You know,
but it'd also be a better weight for Terence.
Maybe, but he's coming from 135. Like, he's just an exceptional fighter. The difference, and although Errol Spence has got a great mindset, Terence Crawford is a beast, mentally. And the one thing that actually pisses me off a little bit, that Terence Crawford is nowhere near the star that he should be. When you listen to his story, and I'm only learning about a lot of it now. I mean, I don't know if you saw when he went up on the stage rapping to Mr. Carter. You know, I just looked at him, I thought, you're a cool motherfucker. Like, you know what I mean? You're actually a superstar. And he's like, I'm thinking, wow, it's really taken this moment for people to see your personality.
Why do you think that is, though?
Because he's been poorly promoted. And, you know, because he refused, I saw him in an interview saying, I refuse to leave Omaha, Nebraska. You know, people said to me, you've got to move to LA, you've got to move to New York and all this. And, like, you kind of diminish sometimes your media opportunities by staying there. And I just think he wasn't promoted correctly. When you think he's a 2-time undisputed champion, like, he's American, he's got a great personality. And then, I think last night or the night before, I'm just scrolling through stuff and I see stuff about his mum, an interview with his mum, I don't know if you've seen it, where she talks about I used to pay boys $10 to try and beat him up. And the whole story is amazing, but it's never been told. And like, how do you build a fighter? How do you build a fighter's narrative if you're not telling the story? And it's not even hard to tell that story. It should just be a stroll in the park for a promoter to come in and say, look at this kid. And like, he's an outstanding talent. He beats Charlo, he beats Spence at 154, and it's all up there with him. Like his ability is unbelievable. He thinks he's unbeatable. And that goes a long way, you know, he's an outstanding fighter.
What was your initial thoughts when you heard that this happened?
Just like, you become numb to this kind of news. But I remember when Jarrell Miller failed his drug test, you know, we'd sold out Madison Square Garden, it was AJ's American debut. Honestly, nearly crumbled to the floor. Like, that was like, 3-4 years ago now? Just like, almost like, I had to go into a room and like lay down and just sort of try and get my thoughts together on what I was going to do. This is like, after the Conor Benn stuff, it just sort of bounces off you. You become so resilient, and I'm not trying to like blow my own trumpet, but this is the same in life, in sport, in business. The more you put yourself in shitty situations, the easier they are to deal with. And, you know, it doesn't mean your emotion's gone out of the game, but it just means that, like, literally, Sean Palmer, as a head counsel, WhatsApped me. I hadn't seen the email from Varda and said, have you seen the email? Can you talk? And I'm like, so I called him straight away, and he's a lawyer, right? Sometimes likes to, you know, exaggerate a little bit. Not exaggerate, but exaggerate the problem. So I was like, what, Sean? He's like, Dillian Whyte's failed a drugs test. And I'm like, are you kidding me? No. And it's like, wow. I mean, firstly, I know that now Dillian Whyte has the fight of his life, really, to try and resolve this issue. But at the same time, none of it really makes sense. Like, he knows he's going into an extensive testing program with VADA. There's really no way out of.
Wasn't he quite insistent on having it as well?
He always is.
Right.
And that's why, you know, but you can't ignore the results at the same time. Like, and you can speak to Dillian's team like I did, and they said ridiculous, like absolutely no way, etc. But they're the results, and you have to deal with that. So, you know, people have said about calling the fight off, the similarities between the Conor Benn situation, etc. Both very different in terms of the results, the substance, everything. One was 7 weeks out, one was a co-promotion, and the co-promotions team wanted to proceed with the fight as well, subject to the British Boxing Board of Control. This was the results that we looked at 7 days out, and AJ said, absolutely not, we need a new opponent. And, hands up, we learned a hell of a lot from that Conor Benn experience. It was the first time we dealt with it, and we moved a lot more swiftly this time. But very different situation, but a horrible situation, because a fight that we really wanted, and, just a really tough road ahead for Dillian Whyte to go through this process.
David Haye had mentioned that Derek Chisora had told him about a week prior that this was going to happen. Do you have any idea what he's sort of...
You can ask him today, but we didn't know until Saturday morning. No one knew. And there's no way Derek Chisora knew, because the results weren't even generated by then. But it's one of his comments, whether he had a feeling, whether he heard something or like whatever, who knows in boxing. But, certainly there was no way he would know by that stage, or even the lab would know by that stage. So
it wasn't a situation of the information came out later?
Completely impossible. I mean, unless someone's given Derek Chisora the information and 10 days before we got the information. Completely impossible. I don't even think that the sample would have been tested when he even knew or says he knew. But he didn't say he knew. I think he just says, I think that Dillian Whyte's going to fail a drugs test and I'm going to come in and step in and fight Anthony Joshua.
Have you heard from Dillian?
No, I spoke to his team. My immediate focus switches to AJ and to make sure he fights, or we need to find out what he wants to do. And that was my first question to him. What do you want to do?
You had everybody throwing their name in the hat too.
Everybody. But, when they do that, 99% are impossible. 50% are doing it for a bit of clout or hype. 45% want 3 times too much money. And
Not
then
enough time to get it done and over the line within a few days, right?
It's like Andy Ruiz, when he puts it out. You really think he's going to be reasonable with it? They all smell an opportunity to make a fortune at late notice. When you're taking the fight off pay-per-view and you're putting it on normal subscription, the money changes in the fight.
Right.
AJ's making much less in this fight than he was going to fight Dillian Whyte, but he wants to fight. So obviously the opponent has to set and fall within a certain budget as well, still making a lot of money. But when someone comes on and says, I want 5, 6 million and 10 million, they're just looking for an opportunity. And I also didn't want someone that isn't even in the gym. Do you know what I mean? That's why I liked Hellenius, because he's fit, he's just boxed, he's done 8 weeks camp, no excuses. So, no one's ever going to be completely happy with a decision, but what people are happy about is, of course, it's not on pay-per-view, and we've got a tremendous heavyweight card with some really good fights on it.
The state of heavyweight boxing has actually been heavily criticized this year. Just seems like we're not getting some of the bigger fights over the line. Is there still talks that if Joshua should be successful this weekend, that you will move forward with the Deontay Wilder fight?
That's the only thing we want. Representatives from Saudi Arabia will be flying in to try and make that deal. Touch wood of an AJ victory, and that's the only fight we want next. I think Wilder wants that fight, AJ wants the fight. We've got to obviously sign the contract, but absolutely 100%. And I like Hellenius in that mould as well, because he's a tall, stand-up fighter that can punch with a backhand, and it's good prep for AJ. So absolutely. And AJ tweeted the other day to say, we're now in August. There hasn't been one World Heavyweight Championship fight yet this year, which is a good point. I know you got one coming up in a couple of weeks with Usyk, but it is slow in that respect, and we need to get moving. And if we can make a Wilder Joshua fight, the only problem going into this fight is, for the Jarrell Miller fight, obviously he failed a drugs test, we got a late replacement, Andy Ruiz. The whole build-up to that fight was about AJ Wilder. Now all of a sudden, we're here again. Failed drugs test, replacement opponent.
Oh my God, you're right.
Deontay Wilder fight being negotiated, do you know what I mean? So I'm just like... but AJ, would be coming off, if he can be victorious on Saturday, 2 wins, Franklin and Hellenius, he'll be back on track. And everything I'm seeing in camp, he's got to put it together in the ring. Fantastic with Derek James, mentally in a great place, really happy, and just wants to perform. And that's why he took the fight.
I'm just curious what your thoughts are on Mike Tyson training Francis Ngannou for Tyson Fury.
It's a circus, isn't it? So Mike Tyson's a legend of the sport. to throw him in with Francis Ngannou is just a good story. And, you know, people always want me to criticise that fight, and I'm not going to criticise it because it is what it is. It's disappointing for boxing that he's not fighting Usyk, but he's making a lot of money against a guy who's never boxed before. You all right, mate? And, you know, so I don't blame him for that. But we all know, you know, and Frank Warren doesn't like it when I say the fight with Usyk is so easy to make. Like, I've worked with Usyk for 5 fights. He's probably the easiest person to deal with. He desperately wants that fight. But, you know, anyway, yeah. But look, yeah, Fury and Ngannou, Mike Tyson link up. Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to help him too much on the night, but so it's a good story.
Yeah, it is.